It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
Laugh.
We had a little fun, because it's a very long day, you know.
And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is The Focus Group with Tim Bennett.
All right, let's go already.
And John Nash.
Pucker up, Buttercup.
With a focus on career, the consumer culture, and marketing from an LGBT point of view. We're all business, except when we're not.
Hey, welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here, as always, joined by my good friend and co-host, Tim Bennett. Did you do your Tim Bennett mug?
That's when I'm supposed to look. I got to look. Where's the light? I don't know where to. Oh, there it is.
We're also joined by our producers in the booth, John and Garrett. John does our video, and Garrett's our sound magician.
Magician.
Well, you know, what you have to do back there is even beyond my technical skills. There's levers and buttons and pool. If there was a pulley, that would.
Can you do something to thin me out? I wore dark blue. I'm just wondering if I can thin out.
I don't know. There's
They're laughing back there. I don't think so.
So find us at focusgroupradio.com. That's actually where you can get all the information about our show, all the platforms that we're on: YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play, and now Reverie, which is a app on the Apple TV and Roku and Chromecast as well. We want you to SLR. That's our fancy acronym for subscribe, like, and rate us. The liking and the rating part is a big thing for our the guy that puts our audio together, Matt, because he thinks that's going to elevate us.
Well, you and I have talked about that a bunch, though. You and I will watch Meet the Press.
I
don't subscribe to any
TV experience only.
Right, but we don't subscribe. I don't follow on Facebook. I don't go to the green room. I don't submit questions. Yeah. I don't like Chuck Todd on his thing. You
like him, but you don't.
No, I mean, but we're not. I don't go there and subscribe and like, and yeah. So it's interesting that we tell other people to do that because I don't do it myself necessarily. Yeah. But it seems to be the way a lot of things are measured.
Oh boy!
But it's BS if anybody.
Well, John and I were talking about that before the show with YouTube and with where you getting your stats and who's doing what. But again, focusgroupradio.com. And for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, everything's under the same handle, which is Focus Group Radio. So we are now at Labor Day weekend.
Right.
And You're
going to laugh what I did.
Before Labor Day weekend?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
I tried making Christmas cookies. Which I know I'm getting a look because I'm one for not pushing the season, but Richard took me down. We went to Rehoboth.
Yeah.
And there's a great Italian restaurant there. It's Italian deli. And they make the absolute best pignoli cookies. They're an almond cookie with little pine nuts on top. So I looked up a recipe and I thought,
they are traditionally a holiday cookie. Yeah.
So I thought, these are so good. And they're $22 a pound.
Whoa!
Frank and Louie's is the name of the place, I think.
That's a high markup for the ingredient.
Well, and they're expensive to make. So I thought, well, how tough can it be? So I look at a recipe, and it's sugar and almond paste and some confectionery sugar and these pine nuts. But they are expensive. So I thought, well, how tough can it be? So I tried to make them. What a mess. So if anyone out there has a recipe for pignolis.
Was the mess a combination of the ingredients or how you actually had to put them on the thing for baking? I
went to YouTube to try to see what people were doing. Apparently the almond paste I got was a little runny. And so it was almost soupy.
Yeah.
No, it's supposed to get pasty and crumbly. Well, mine was like soup. Yeah. So when I put it on the thing, it all went together. And then Richard was laughing. He goes, you made cannoli rolls. Because I roll them up. It was disgusting. Anyway, they weren't I was trying to get a jump on Christmas. I thought I might do a homemade Christmas this year.
By several months. So what I'm doing lately is I'm trying not to watch the news because I'm getting really, really tired of the word pivot. If I hear pivot again, someone's pivoting. He's pivoting.
Oh, John.
And, so I'm getting tired of that. But you know what I did? I'm trying to get this project off the ground. I began it a while ago. Finally, I found what I was looking for, and actually Bob found it for me. It was in this plastic box in the basement. All my photographs from high school through probably the first couple years of living in Manhattan, and they're prints. Remember we used to take the disposables?
Are they in order? Let me guess you. I'm going to guess yours.
They're all
thrown in a box. Yours are probably in an envelope marked with a date with the negatives.
Yes, they happen to be.
So why bother? They're already done. They're already cataloged.
Here's the thing. They're all fading.
Oh, really?
And when that Kodak stuff that we shot with back then, there was one. Remember the 110 was that little Instamatic, or 30, or that the drop-in roll, the cartridge. I guess the dyes that they used and the substrate that they put that on, the actual celluloid, when you hold a negative, that plasticky thing, not meant to be 100-year-old stuff, right? Not archival. So the prints look really, some of them have shifted. In fact, many of them have stuck together where it's almost like putting silly putty on the comics Sunday Morning with Nancy peeling off her face. Like,
I wondered why that happened. Is that just
we always had these done at like drugstores, Mystic
Photo. We usually lost every fifth roll.
And they gave you a free one.
Yeah, they probably have a
You're like,
wall.
I don't want a free goddamn roll. You took my pictures. Give me the... So... the reason I want to do this is I want to digitize. I want to go through them and throw away. For every 24, remember it was 24, 36, or 12.
You're very careful about a picture then because it costs money. Now you just click.
But there were times when you had 4 on the roll and you took a picture of the TV set, of your dog, of your cat, whatever, and those are garbage pictures, right? And a lot of the ones we took are not good. So I began going through the photos and making a stack of the toss-aways.
Oh, my God.
And the saves. And in fact, there are services that scan your photos.
Oh, they do it for you?
And they claim the print is just as good as the negative, that they're 1-to-1 ratio. The negative's not going to be any better quality than the print. But I read this article by this guy that did this for his family. They had 9,732 photos. And he calculated that if he scanned 15 photos a day or 20, it was going to take him, I think it was like 2 or 3 years to archive the whole family thing. I was not into that at all.
Well, that's why I thought you were going to tell me you were going to scan them. But you're going to send
I'm going to send them out to us.
How's that work? Do you put them in blocks yourself and
yes,
say?
And you wrap them with elastic band. They don't. And what you get back is
a book or a disc.
They just send you back a DVD with all your pictures as JPEG or TIFF.
How do you hand those around?
Then you import them, and I would make a book, like one of those Apple books, like we do for some of our clients and stuff, like a photo book. This is for my old age.
I'd like to see how that goes. So
this is for my infirmed years.
Maybe if yours goes well, then I'll do that. Because the thing that I was going to do that I never did was similar thing in cleaning is I found all those old rowing shirts I had from college.
You're going to make a quilt.
I was going to make a quilt.
Yeah, you talked about it.
Because I can't fit into them. But and not
I
that
thought
would
you
wear
had
them.
that underway. That was going to be.
No, I didn't because all things went haywire. I have them collected though. They're in a bag. They're in a bag in my closet. But
okay.
I'll do the quilt and then you'll do the book and then we'll see.
We'll compare.
Is that a business expense?
No. It's not that expensive either.
No.
The photo, and then they color correct the. They know by the year the print was made what Kodak was doing at the time. So the computer, they scan the image and then it color corrects it back to what it was when you picked it up at the your local photo processor. That's another big advantage. Who wants to do that, right?
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that's a project. But you know what I got caught in, and you probably get caught in this too, memory lane. When you start going through photos, I'm like, oh, I remember that dorm party. I remember that. Like you start flipping, and you actually...
Worst part is, well, like, who is that? And then I look and it's me. That's the worst part.
For today's
who's
show,
that?
by the way, for today's show, we are going to do some memory lane stuff. Tim and I decided, we were on the phone the other day, and we were talking about this time of year, everybody's back to school, right? And I remember, and we were just jokingly said to each other, do you remember first semester freshman year? And Tim said, let's do a thing where we both are must-have items in a college dorm room, right? And the bands we were exposed to that we never heard of coming out of Connecticut, right?
Or you heard of and maybe you just...
We maybe heard 1 or 2 songs. We didn't really know. So that's going to be later on in the show. And then we have a ShopTalk piece that I was frankly surprised by. Sex and gender are more important than income in determining views on the division of household chores. But we'll leave it at that. Sounds clinical.
I had notes on that. You'll be mad, but I had notes.
I'm sure I'm going to be in the crosshairs for that one.
Yeah.
So what caught your eye today?
Well, our listeners know that I live in Philadelphia, and there's some things about Philadelphia I absolutely love.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, kind of the craziness of Philadelphia. So the headline is, it's been very hot this summer. We had record heat, despite everybody thinking that climate change doesn't happen. But we had another record
July.
July. And the headline of this, and I looked, and there's been pictures posted everywhere. I don't know if it made it up here to New York or other cities, but city shuts down the dumpster pool craze.
I just love the name, a dumpster
So
pool.
if you look there, if you're following us on YouTube, you can see the dumpsters there. So there's a couple of guys.
How do they water?
Well, so Jake Long and Justin, they have a party every year on their block in Kensington, and they used to do a giant slip and slide. So Philadelphia does a lot of big block parties all the time. And what happens is you're supposed to have a permit. Most people just pull their car across the street and it's a party. And at the end of the day, you pull your car away and then people can drive through. So there's some pictures there to see what happens. So these guys decided that it got so hot that maybe the slip and slide, they would like to have a pool. So it was difficult to find a pool. So they came up with the idea and they said, hey, let's convert a dumpster into a pool. It's sturdy. It's rentable. We could just give it back. So somebody will deliver it. So what happened was
one of the construction things, like when you're
a
having
big
demolition
dumpster.
done.
So as if you were doing a renovation
they're not
on a house.
watertight, are they?
Well, so what they did was they called a couple of dumpster places. Some people said no. They all thought it was a great idea. It's only $250 a month, right? So
a whole month?
Right. So they get the dumpster delivered. They went to Home Depot and they got some plywood. And they lined it with plywood, and then they got tarps, and then took pool noodles and lined the edges of it so it wouldn't be sharp.
Safety first.
It was tall enough that kids couldn't get into it.
Is that the pool noodles in there?
Right, so kids couldn't get into it. And then what they did is they went to a fire hydrant. They had a five nozzle manifold and filled it up. It said it took them about 22 minutes to fill up the 3,000 gallons of water that it took to fill it up. And then they had a dumpster party. It went all night. And some other people caught on in the city and ended up doing these. And they ended up being all over town. So the city got furious. They said somebody came by from license and inspections and said, put their business card on it and said, permit. So they called there and said to the woman, hey, we've set up just a temporary pool. She said, I don't care what it is. She said, first of all, you shouldn't be swimming in something that is used for waste and so forth. And they said, well, we power washed it. So then they said,
the nanny state coming and wagging their finger once again.
Right. So she said, well, regardless of whether it's a pop-up pool or not, you need to have you can't use the fire hydrant to fill it, and you need to make sure you still have a permit, because in the city is if you have a pool that's above 2 feet and longer than 12 feet, you have to have a permit for a pool, just a regular temporary pool as well. So they went back and forth, and what the city ended up doing is they sent a letter, and they said, so this edict came down from license and inspection, and this again was in the newspaper. Residents are not allowed to tap into fire hydrants to turn dumpsters into swimming pools. We're not screwing around, said the head of licensing and inspections.
Did you say that in the letter or the interview?
We're not screwing around, Philly. Listing several reasons why, quote, you shouldn't swim in a receptacle most often used for waste. So they also took away party privileges for the block in Kensington. They're not going to be allowed. The 2400 block of Cedar will no longer be granted block party permits. And she said, well,
That's a slap on the wrist.
Right. And she said, well, we think this does not require explanation. You can't believe the amount of press requests we've gotten in the last few days of people calling and asking us about these dumpsters that are showing up all over the city as pools. She says you would think that this decision would not require an explanation. So these guys, though, the last thing they did before they got fined, they thought we better drain this thing. So they moved all the cars and they opened it up and let the 3,000 gallons shoot down the road.
What happened?
Well, they said that the water shot out. We moved all the cars behind, and there's a sewer in the corner, so we thought it'd be fine. We just popped the gate. The water stretched down the whole block, only about a half an inch high. We figured it'd be much worse.
So the whole after all the water came, it was only like that much water, half inch of water.
Right. That ended up filling the streets. So then what ended up happening now is they moved to these dump truck. So they've used dump trucks now for the pools.
Or pickup trucks.
Pickup trucks. I'm sorry, pickup trucks for the pools now. So they moved from dumpsters to pickup trucks, and that was another group of guys that weren't able to get the dumpster since the city put a moratorium on it, and now they made a little pool in the back of their pickup.
Anything fun.
I thought it was hilarious.
I think it's hilarious, and I think that. I think it'd be, imagine you're walking along and hey, swim with us. It's a dumpster
pool.
It's a dumpster pool. I think it's hysterical.
Ingenuity.
And it's very Philly.
Oh, that's what I think is so funny about it. It is typical Philadelphia.
Well,
What caught your eye?
Mine couldn't be any further away from
Usually is
a dumpster pool, but No, I don't see the connection to any of this. Okay, so the headline of this article, which shocked me, was called "They'll Kill for It." Ramen has become the black market currency in American prisons. Remember ramen
Oh,
noodles?
yeah, I hated those.
The brick, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so instant ramen is delicious. I question that word.
Salty.
Yeah. Easy to cook, yes. Ludicrously cheap. Definitely agree with that. And surprisingly non-perishable. For all those reasons and more, noodles have overtaken tobacco as the preferred underground currency that inmates use in prison. Now, I didn't realize this, but I think smoking is banned in a lot of prisons.
Is it?
Inside. I think they actually have to go outside to do that. And
Where did you find this article? Was it in just regular paper?
Yeah, it was the Washington Post, actually. Because there's a
second one from the Post you've gotten.
You don't like that.
I don't read the Post.
It's not like the Times, right? So prisoners are a guy named Michael Gibson Light, who is a doctoral candidate at the University of Arizona School of Sociology, did this whole study about currency in prison, and that's how he discovered ramen was like this big thing. And it turns out that the prisoners are so unhappy with the quality and quantity of prison food that they get that they're relying on ramen as a in-cell substitute for the lack of calories. And this one inmate named Alvarez, what was his full name? He says it's because people are hungry that they use them. So if somebody has here's how he said one day they were going by this guy's cell and they saw his open locker and he had 20 soups, and he was basically a soup king. He was a ramen king. He was the
Nazi of the prison.
He was the ramen king
Cell
of
block
prison.
C.
I know, it is really crazy, right? This Alvarez, this one prisoner, has never had ramen in his life before prison. He has been released. He's now living in New Mexico, Tijuana, Mexico, and he's actually doing a cookbook called Prison Ramen: Recipes and Stories from Behind Bars. His favorite brand is a brand called Maruchan, Maruchan. It just shocks me, right? He'll eat it before a handball tournament or a workout. For some reason, it could give him an extra push. Well, I'll tell you why. It's nothing but carbohydrates, right? Whoom.
Salty. Maybe he and Martha can get together. She did a
Here's
book
the
on making
sad
a
part,
poncho,
though.
didn't she?
This is she could do
Prison,
a poncho
make a poncho in
class,
prison and how to cook in the
how to cook
microwave.
ramen. They don't have that. No. So here's how he did ramen. He said you would have to sit there at the tap, for their hot and cold water, and push this button for an hour just to get the water lukewarm. Then he would carefully open up one half of the package, and as the button he'd push and it gets lukewarm, he gets the noodles a little soft, and then he would make what he would call a ramen witch. It was like a sandwich. So they eat them almost dry too. Yeah, so there you go.
I hope I never go to prison.
John's laughing.
Unless I get licorice. They have Twizzlers?
I don't know what the canteen has, frankly. I don't even know how much they make. So the prisoners get paid to do things like chores and stuff, but I think it's literally 10 cents, 15 cents.
Like the training school.
Yeah.
The chit.
So ramen at one point was over $2 a package in prison. And when this one prisoner was released, he was shocked to see that ramen actually only cost like 79 cents or $1 or something like that, because he was used to the prison prices.
Prison prices
is very high.
Out of control.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's an interesting one. I don't know. I've never heard of that one. That's the kind of thing I would have found though.
You would have found ramen. Yeah.
I think I
so
would.
I think actually we kind of coalesced around two and uniquely down and dirty things: ramen and dumpster.
Ramen and dumpster pools.
Dumpster pools. Yeah.
Today, so it is Labor Day weekend. Hope everybody's having a great time enjoying family and some downtime. It's also International Bacon Day, September 3rd. Today. Do you like bacon, John? Richard doesn't like bacon.
I love bacon.
He's the only person I know who doesn't like bacon. Remember years ago we had some listeners send us bacon toothpaste.
I remember that. Yeah.
It's also Skyscraper Day. It's so do you know what a skyscraper is? One time we were in Austin, you were making fun of the tour that went by for the 6-story building.
Duck boat goes by and we're in Austin. Yeah, and the girl's like, "This is the observe the high rises of downtown Austin."
I think it was six stories. To be a skyscraper, you've got to be 40 floors.
Okay.
At least, and or have a height of larger than 492 feet. In 1833, the very first successful penny newspaper began selling in the U.S. It was the New York Sun, and it was launched by Benjamin Day. The following day, on the 4th, Barney Flaherty answered an ad to the New York Sun and became the world's very first newsboy or paperboy at the age of 10. 1935, Sir Malcolm Campbell became the first person to drive an automobile over 300 miles per hour. He did it out at the Bonneville Salt Flats. He was a racing and motor journalist. The car looked like a rocket. Whenever you see those things in the Bonneville Salt Flats, I always laugh at them because they're really just rockets that don't
On
take
wheels
flight.
with a like some kind of nominal stabilization and steering system, right?
I've asked you this before, and I don't think you've done. Do you get Buzzer in New York or upstate? The channel Buzzer.
No. And is that the old game
So there's
shows?
an old game show network, and it's called Buzzer, Buzzr. And they show What's My Line, I've Got a Secret, lots of the old black and white shows. And they include the commercials, which are so sexist and racist. They're unbelievable. But they include the old commercials.
Wow,
And,
I wonder how they got, like, those must have been hardwired into the show.
Yeah, they were wired into the show, and then they also do live reads and so forth. But there's one show that I like, which... What's My Line, which is very kind of a highbrowy show, but it's where you try to guess what somebody does.
I used to
for
love
work.
What's My Line.
So I took a picture there of Dorothy Kilgallen, and there was lots of conspiracy around her, but she was given information and she had announced that she was going to blow the lid off the Kennedy assassination. And she had some detailed information about what happened. And then she was found dead a month later in her New York City apartment. And they don't quite understand why. There was all kinds of conspiracies about how she died. She taped the show the night that hours before. It was
Autopsy
great.
at all? Did anybody?
There was maybe drugs. There was a bunch of things, but no. But some people said, well, maybe she didn't do drugs. Was drinking. Maybe she didn't really drink. Maybe she did. So there was. It's another one of the conspiracy theories around the Kennedy assassination, which I always find interesting. When we had Jesse Ventura on that time, when he went through all the craziness with us. 1967, this must have been a great day in Sweden. The motorist stopped driving on the left side and began driving on the right and caused all kinds of commotion and problems in the streets.
I looked at this picture earlier, and
Would you think it was a trip to IKEA? That's what it looks like, right? It looks like you're going to IKEA to pick up...
they're all fighting for space to
ooflof.
go get meatballs. What do they call the...
or an ooflof to hang on the wall.
or
or
something like that. A kloppin' clippin'.
Kloppin'. The 1992, David Bowie appeared on the cover of Architectural Digest. He was the first human on the cover in 4 years. I don't remember humans being on.
No, it's usually just
Architectural
the
Digest,
door or beautifully a room. And Architectural Digest has things in their magazine like this. This table was made for a room like this in a house like this. Crappy stuff like that.
Talk about bad luck in 2010. You remember, I like the group Electric Light Orchestra, Yellow.
I love Yellow.
Mike Edwards of the band was killed when he was driving his van and a giant bale of hay rolled down the hill. You could see it there, crashed into the car and killed him. Can you imagine what luck that is?
Rolling Bay of Hay kills ELO cellist. Now, there's a couple things about this.
Rolling.
Yeah, there's the bale of hay, A, and B, a rock band that had a cellist. See, that's the other thing, because, a little sidebar on ELO. We were going to visit friends for dinner on Saturday, and I had Pandora hooked up, and I was listening to the Steely Dan channel. So it ends up being Steely Dan, ELO,
It's like yacht rock.
Doobie Brothers, like this. So suddenly this ELO song comes on, and Bob starts laughing hilariously, and he has this memory of being a truant in high school. He went on some class trip to Boston, and they bolted from the aquarium, and they went to a record store in Harvard Square, and he bought Out of the Blue. Remember, Out of the Blue is that gatefold that it would open up, and the spaceship would, I loved gatefold albums. And I had never heard that story in 30 years of knowing Bob, but the memory was triggered by listening to you.
Bob doesn't, we don't know a lot of Bob stories. Bob knows ours. We don't know a lot of Bob stories.
That's a good point, right? Yeah. He does, yeah.
September 4th, Sunday, this city was founded by Spanish settlers. Do you want to guess the name, the original name of the city?
By Spanish settlers?
Yeah. It's out west.
This would be, would it be Los Angeles or?
Right. So there's a couple things I didn't realize about Los Angeles. It's the city that's mispronounced most often.
It should be Los.
Well, people don't ever pronounce it correctly, they said, and they went through a whole list of Rick Perry all the way down to...
So what should it be?
Well, the original name of the city was El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora la Reina de Los Angeles de la Porciuncula.
That's a big fail. That one's
So it was
a
the
big
town.
fail.
So translated, it was loosely the town of the Queen of Angels, but the Spanish wanted it to be El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora la Reina de Los Angeles de Porciuncula. They said that's not going to happen. So they took Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and then there was a debate to anglicize it. So it was Los Angeles, Los Angeles,
But it's
Los Angeles, Los Angles, Los Angeles. So back in the 60s, they decided too many people were mispronouncing it, so they came out with an edict that it was Los Angeles. But they said people still to this day, they just said even Rick Perry was just at a rally, as was John Kasich, and they were calling it Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
Los
okay.
Angeles. So
And for the more urbane, L.A.
L.A. out west.
Out west. yeah.
1885, the Exchange Buffet opened in New York City, the first self-service cafeteria. I wanted to head there. 1888, George Eastman registered the name Kodak for his film. The camera took 100 exposures. So that I didn't even know you were going to talk about film today. So that's interesting. See how they think.
Well,
these things
that's
collide.
the psychic connection we have. But what a shame about Kodak, right?
Yeah. Well, it's
It's a brand that was emblematic of, these are the times of your life. I mean,
Kodak moment. I
used to
love
get off the train.
I love the logo.
Before they cleaned up Grand Central, they had this enormous billboard that would go across one end of Grand Central, and it was always a really beautiful picture and it was always for Kodak. So yeah, and the interesting thing about Kodak is they actually developed the scanning,
Digital?
the digital process. Yeah, they actually had the patent for that, and they didn't really do much with it because obviously they had a huge business in film. So
Sitting around. And the last thing was 1957, the Ford Motor Company began selling the Edsel, which was so unpopular it went off the market 2 years later, much like the Tribeca, which you can see there in the bottom right.
you don't like that Tribeca
Another
car.
turd in the auto industry, the B9 Tribeca from Subaru. Look at how ugly that car was.
Yeah, I remember when we first started seeing the production stills for the Tribeca.
Yeah.
And I remember Jeff was working with you at the time, and he was in branding. And they used to do this experiment where you would take the car out and they would get
Try to get the right angle.
like how low the camera. He said they couldn't get the camera low enough
No.
to make the car look halfway.
It was so
decent.
ugly. I remember my boss saying to me, just own it because it's so ugly. And we knew it was bad because when they showed it in Miami for the first time, they started with the rear end and it turned. And there were 3,000 people in the audience and it got to that front with that grill. And at that point, typical Japanese, though, full steam ahead, will make it and do the change later on, which they
The
eventually did.
Edsel is not an like nowadays. I
Yeah,
look
it
at
looks
that, that's
kind
a
of-
classic.
Yeah.
Pretty cool lines. I love the streamlining in the back.
Yeah. So I'd like to see
Hey,
one.
it's not doesn't have the reputation of the Pinto with the rear end collisions, right? I
No, not yet.
Or the was it the Corvair that used to just catch on
Corvair
fire?
would catch on fire,
Yeah.
too. Everyone had one.
We did.
So what happened in science this week?
Weekend Science. Okay, so I've expanded that to be science, technology, engineering, and math because it gives.
Oh, so we're moving.
Well,
It's like an amoeba.
the pool has to grow. Yeah. So, this day, September 3rd, was the birth of Louis Sullivan, who is credited as being one of the iconic American architects responsible for the skyscraper.
White Skyscraper Day.
There you go.
Okay.
And he did most of his work in Chicago, actually. And
Is that him?
That's him on the left.
He's attractive.
It's funny when I called up his picture.
I don't know if I like the hairline, but
But yeah, there's a couple of him without the beard, but the beard really makes it. And there's a couple where he was younger, a little bit older, but that's the one that people fixate on. He was the first guy to come up with something called it's functional skeleton construction, but it was this idea of making a steel cage that the building hung off of, and that's what allowed you to go higher. And he was responsible for the Gage Building and Stock Exchange in Chicago, the Auditorium Building in Chicago. That's that beautiful curved thing you see there. And the Guarantee Building in Buffalo, plus many, many more that he worked on with a bunch of different architects. And Tim, I don't think we saw this, but the Wainwright Building in St. Louis was another one that it's famous. It still stands, and it's a lot of his architecture is still around. New York City and Chicago both benefited by
We were
it.
in the arch that I thought would break any minute.
This one's, yeah, you own those little tiny
St.
cars
Louis.
that went up that St. Louis Arch. Okay, so then on September 7th is the birth of a man named James Alfred Van Allen.
The Van Allen belt.
And do you only know that from the B-52s?
B-52s.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Van Allen belt.
Well, so Fred Schneider must have had the same love affair with the concept of the Van Allen belt. So American physicist who discovered the Earth's magnetosphere, two toroidal zones of radiation due to trapped charged particles encircling the Earth, and they're known as the Van Allen radiation belts. And he actually discovered them by using stock of old German V-2 rockets that they found after the United States moved into Germany after the war, and he would shoot them into low Earth orbit and figure it out. But as a kid, when I learned about, and that's why I think Fred Schneider was a lot like us, when I heard the term Van Allen belt, I thought someday if we get to fly to a space station and have a martini, I mean, back then in the 60s, we were going to have
you were gonna do that,
flying
yeah.
cars and
have a
jetpacks.
backpack,
And
right.
Tim, I'll meet you in orbit. We'll have a martini. I thought the hostess on the plane would say, we're now passing through the Van Allen belt. So that's the only reason I included
roll,
that.
roll, and doing Andromeda. That's a great song.
So here's the thing. If the B-52s talked about it, or the Go-Go's, if it had any science,
I knew it.
You knew it, yes.
I learned a lot of science. I learned about Mesopotamia from the B-52s. I learned a lot of things about history from the B-52s.
Especially Mesopotamia.
Or the radium clock, the glow of the radium with the.
The Timex gals dipping them in the glow in the dark lights. All right, so lastly, on September 8th in 1966, yours truly's favorite, one of my favorite TV shows of all time, premiered on NBC, and that would be Star Trek. Oh, so okay.
Every week, this is as bad as North Korea.
John likes
This
Star
is as bad as North Korea. So either Star Trek and North Korea come up in every show.
Hey, it's like Seinfeld and Superman.
Yeah.
So in the left corner of the
The
picture,
show was on for 2 years, and you've made a life out of it. Huh?
3 years. 3
years.
Yeah. But let's see, if the B-52s sang about it, Star Trek for 3 years, you'd be like, oh, Star Trek was on for 3 years, right? So
Why is the one in orange and the rest are in yellow and blue?
Okay, so that's Scotty. He's an engineer. Engineering is
So you all had
red.
different colors.
Yeah, command is gold, and medical sciences, or medical and science, was blue. That little picture in the left-hand corner, that black and white thing, that's what the TV Guide ad used to. Remember TV Guide? Yeah.
I like how it says in color, but the ad's in black and white.
I never knew this show was in color till we got my grandma's color TV when she was going to die. So anyway, it ran for 3 seasons, and of course we all know the story. It became far more popular in syndication than it ever did when it was a first-run television show.
Is it still on?
There's a thing that they do.
I probably
where
should watch it. I've
somewhere in
never
the
watched an
world,
episode.
there's always a Star Trek episode playing, whether it's this one, The Next Generation, DS9, Voyager. There's always or Enterprise. There's always a show.
I've never watched an episode.
And they're launching a new one called Star Trek Discovery. New show coming from CBS next year.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try to watch it. I've never watched an episode of Star Trek. Never.
Really?
Yeah. Never. I watched Lost in Space.
I'll have to puzzle about which one to indoctrinate you with.
It's just like I like the Munsters and I didn't like Addams Family. I liked Lost in Space. I didn't like Star Trek. I liked Munsters. I didn't like Addams Family. There was something about.
I
liked Hillbillies. I didn't like Green Acres. It was
Oh, the Beverly Hillbillies?
Yeah.
I didn't like Green Acres either, though. No. I like the Beverly Hillbillies better.
So, I like Superman. I didn't like Batman.
I didn't even like either of those two. I like Aquaman, but that's.
Well, I didn't watch that.
That was the
a
League
TV
of
show?
there was the League at the Hall of Justice and the League of Justice, whatever.
All right.
Aquaman was cool. He did water things. Okay.
Business birthdays, oddly enough. So we have 2 business birthdays. We're the only show in the universe that does business birthdays. Both of them are car guys.
Really?
So celebrating
I saw one of them.
September 3rd is Ferdinand Porsche. He was born in 1875. He died in 1951 at 75 years old. And he founded the Porsche motor car company, but he also is best known for creating the first gasoline-electric hybrid vehicle way, way back when. And also the Volkswagen Beetle and the Mercedes-Benz SS and several other important developments along with other Porsche automobiles. He was known as the great German engineer, but there's lots of controversy about him from his help with the Nazi. He was a Nazi, He was born in the Czech Republic. He became German in the 30s because Hitler had thought that people from the Czechoslovakia area were subhuman. So, and he was doing a lot of work for the German war efforts, so he changed his nationality. He also designed the very first racing car, the 1923 Benz Trolfenwagen, which was the first mid-engine rear-wheel drive racing car. He visited Henry Ford in Detroit many times to try to learn the importance of productivity. And he was surprised at how the workers and managers treated each other as equals. And even he had to carry his own tray in the cafeteria and eat with the workers.
That tells you
all you need to know.
Everything you need to know.
Happy birthday, Ferdinand. And on September 4th, Henry Ford II, not the first, but Henry Ford II was born September 4th, 1917, died at 70 in 87, sometimes referred to as HF2 or Hank the Deuce. He was the oldest son of Edsel Ford and the oldest grandson of Henry Ford.
I'm glad you put the Pinto there with him.
He was.
If you're watching on YouTube, Tim put up a picture.
That was his era.
Pinto.
He was president of Ford. Actually, he wasn't. It was after him. But he was president of Ford from 45 to 60. So,
by the way,
the Fords, of course, still run.
That
Ford.
last point, president from 45 to 60. Right. Is that a rarity these days? Like that's a.
Well, So Ford is still, the Ford family, much like Campbell Soup, still has lots of influence from the Dorrance family or the. So the Ford family still has lots of leadership positions.
The roles in the company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether they're more ceremonial or not, I don't know, but I do know that. You're probably right that
in our day and age, those positions are
don't last that long.
Not 15 or 20 years. No. Not for a president. Well, not for a CMO.
Although that was the heyday of, if you think about it, right after the war, it was the heyday of manufacturing for us as a country, and so probably we were king of the road of manufacturing and auto. So did well. So, hey, it's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, John and I are going to reminisce about, since as everyone's getting ready to go off to school, about some of the items that we used to take with us or must-have items, as well as music we were introduced to. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Brought to you by the Volkswagen Golf GTI. Named one of Car and Driver's 10 Best, 10 years in a row. Let's make some money.
He's the business manager. Let him manage.
This is the Focus Group.
Champagne! Champagne for everyone!
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. Find everything you need to know about our show at focusgroupradio.com. And all things social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn is Focus Group Radio. As promised, Tim and I were talking earlier in the week about, right around Labor Day, I get to reminisce about college. We both do, actually. And we were just thinking about the funny things that occur freshman year, the first semester, the music indoctrination, things you have to have in your dorm room. And back in the day, there was a big business in fridge rental, remember?
Oh, yeah.
You used to have to rent your mini fridge. You used to have a hot pot. I didn't really use that hot pot too much, but you had to have a fridge. So Tim and I decided we're going to each throw up a couple things that we had to have in school. So why don't you go first with your must-haves, the things
must-haves.
the things
before I do that, though, you triggered something with that fridge. My parents, that was one of the graduation gifts I got was a mini fridge. And there was this kid that lived down the hall that was studying in the dorm that was majoring in classical music or something.
What he storing?
And he had a smoking jacket on. I still remember my father looking at him like just a smacked ass. He had a smoking jacket on and kind of a hair askew, and then his name was Max, and he was from Baltimore. And my father's bringing it in. He looks at the refrigerator and taps it. It's kind of like you would, taps it a little bit and says, "These little freezer trays will be great for bourbon on the rocks." And my father's like, "Oh boy."
If he had a cigarette holder.
Or a pipe. All he needed was a pipe.
Actually, the pipe would be...
smoking jacket, it was hilarious.
That would be better.
So anyway, I didn't...
Did he end up joining a frat?
Yeah, he did. He joined kind of a nerdy frat. And I don't ever know what happened to him. I should look him up to find out what happened to him. But he was a real classical music nut and lived down the hall in a single, which was a big deal. So I picked... So I put a graphic up, or there's a graphic up of the things I picked. And for some reason, and I don't know where this happened, I made a point of getting, and somebody must have told me I looked good in it once. So I bought a red and white gingham checked shirt. I'd buy every year a new one. And usually Levi's sometimes had the pearl buttons or whatever.
Yep.
That one I think is Land's End. And I would always do that in a pair of Levi's kind of off-white cords.
Yep.
But the pants of choice for me, I always went school shopping for. And to this day, I was looking it up. I laughed. Dickies, the pants Dickies. So you get them at Bob's Surplus. We used to get them. And back then they were about $12.99.
Yeah,
they're still $16 to $18. You can buy them. They're work pants, but they come in navy, khaki, Kelly green.
They look good.
Brown. I thought that. Well, I used to wear them all the time in college. When I'd come home, you must have seen me in them. And I remember when I bought a pair of Kelly green and red. My parents should have known then. The pants were great because they said the original is still best. Trademark permanent crease and a stain release finish. The pants can handle the dirtiest of dirty work and still come out fresh and strong. And you can still buy them for under $20. So I would always get Dickies in different colors.
Now you got me thinking, because I hate buying pants.
The Dickies are great.
And I really do hate buying. In fact, I hate buying a lot of clothing, and I will only buy a certain brand, or I'll go to a certain
You should try
store.
these on. So I was thinking of revisiting again because as I was searching for the picture, Walmart, JCPenney, Kohl's, they all have Dickies.
Done deal. We have got a Kohl's. I have to. Yeah, this is a great
For
idea.
under $20, just try a pair on, see what you think. But so Dickies. The other thing I always had with me until I got made a lot of fun of was a comb. I always had a plastic.
Oh,
comb.
you had to have a comb with you.
So the little plastic comb, but my hair would get
I have
staticky.
to have a comb, and I'm like practically bald.
But I
had
never
hair.
went anywhere without a comb.
Yeah,
Kind
it
of
was
like
one of those black combs.
Kind of like you don't go anywhere without your phone now. You
have a
go anywhere
comb.
without a comb. The other thing I had, and part of this was my dad grew up in Maine, and as did my
You had your boots.
grandparents. I always had bean boots.
Yeah.
And but I also wore the bean Blucher mocks. There was lots of bean stuff. But I thought the boot was most iconic. And then you and I both did this. I probably had way too many albums. And when I think about the crates, I would bring 2 huge crates of albums. Talk about taking up space in the car. Now you could go with a little
My niece.
thumb drive, right?
It's your phone.
Right. So, but imagine
Her whole library. fits
imagine
in her.
crating all those albums and how heavy they were. But I always carted albums back and forth to Ohio. So those were kind of the 5 things that
All right. Now I
was on my
would say that
list.
on my list, I would obviously albums, but I reduced it even to a more like arcane kind of thing. So here are mine. One of them was you just said you had to crate your albums.
Right.
So you had to have a supply of milk crates.
Did you steal them?
Yeah, we always stole them from the dorm, the dining
Dairy
halls.
in town or
Yeah.
something? Oh.
The dining hall would put them in the back, and they were perfect for that size. Was the long way
For the albums, right.
albums,
Yeah.
but they were great for books. And if you stack them in your closet, they were
Shelf.
also shelves for sweaters and things
Shoes
like
and
that.
things. Yeah, I forgot about that.
So you had to have that. The next one was a stereo, I think.
Yeah.
Now this one's a modern TEAC, and then there's a CD drive there. But back when we were kids, it had if you were lucky, you had a cassette deck built in.
I didn't have
and you
that.
could do your mixtapes that way. You would play your album and do your mixtapes. And I loved making mixtapes, man. That's an art form because it was such a science, right? Yeah, ka-chunk, play, press
Wait.
play, record.
How easy it is now.
And then I put up this other thing that Bob and I were laughing about this. Do you remember sticky tack?
Oh, yeah.
So you got dinged if you put holes in the wall in the dorm, and so we would use that to hang up our posters. And at the end of the semester, everybody was furious because the sticky tack would leak through and make a stain, like an oil stain on your little poster. And then freshman year, I had to have the preppy handbook with me practically all the time.
Oh, my God, I forgot all about it. Yeah.
And I
It was
was
your guide.
It was our guide, and the first semester I showed up, a guy walks up to me out of nowhere. My mom's dropping me off at school, and this guy shakes my hand. He goes, "You must be John Nash." I'm like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He goes, "Oh, we'll talk later." That was my RA, the guy named Mark Katz. So weeks later, we're in his room doing something with either booze or pot. And I said, "Hey, by the way, how did you know it was me?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I looked down the list and I see that you're the only person coming from Connecticut. I thought you'd have alligators all over you." And he goes, "You did." And I had an Izod shirt, Izod belt, Izod shoes, and I had a preppy handbook. So those I thought, and plus records and other things. But these are the were that you had. These are like made.
Who were your first roommates? Do you remember them? Where they were from?
Well, yes, that was Carlos and Calvin. One was from the Bronx and one was from upstate New York.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you had
And
two.
I'm surprised you don't remember this because this was your fault.
Hey, listen, mine was blind. My roommate was blind. My mother asked him.
I wonder if we would be able to tell that story. All right, we'll skip that. Except to say that Tim helped me write out my housing request form. They listened to what he wrote. The assignment comes in. I freak out and call my dad, who's at work one day. He puts me on speakerphone in a meeting with 12 people. After I tell my problem, laughter, just like, you don't got a problem, click, bzz, bye. Remember to tell. All right. So music that we were discovering. We didn't discover. I think we kept it to first semester freshman year. Our first impressions of bands we may have known about a little bit, but
well, I did it two ways. So I did the bands I had no idea, I'd never heard of, that I was introduced to. So one of them, I went to school in Ohio. So I went to Marietta, Ohio, which is about 2.5 hours south of Cleveland. And there was a big band at the time in the 70s and 80s called the Michael Stanley Band. And I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
When I looked at that picture, I vaguely thought I knew Michael Stanley.
They were kind of they were similar to a Huey Lewis and the News. There was always the saxophone, whatever. They had a big hit in 1981 with "He Can't Love You," which they would play non-stop. He can't love you like I love you.
All right, now I know you're talking. Yep.
And they were from Cleveland, and they were huge. And of course, there were a lot of kids from Ohio I went to school with. So that band was everywhere on T-shirts, but I'd never heard of the Michael Stanley Band coming from Connecticut. But that was a popular band, as was NRBQ, which stands for New Rhythm and Blues Quartet, and they were out of Kentucky. And it was a kind of a blend
they have
of
a top 10 or
yeah, they had they did a lot of covers.
So it was instrumental?
It was a blend of rock, pop, jazz, blues. They had a big following from Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Bonnie Raitt sang their songs, Elvis Costello, Keith Richards, Los Lobos. They were the official house band on The Simpsons for season 10 through 12.
The official house
band, they said, for The Simpsons.
I love The Simpsons.
And they were also on and featured in a number of movies: Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, Pilot, 28 Days, Days of the Dead.
So they have a very unique following.
They have a unique following. I would say it's a little bit, the string cheese incident.
Yeah.
Probably similar to that, but they never had a song list. They never had a set list. So you would just go and, depending upon what they wanted to play, sometimes they do a lot of covers.
Got it.
But sometimes they would do some of their own things. But it was one of those groups that I now remember this album at Yankee Stadium, live at Yankee Stadium, was the one everybody was listening to.
Did you have a record store on campus? Like we had a co-op. We had a record co-op.
We did, but we bought most of our stuff at Kresge's.
Well,
which was across.
We would go to Boscov's or whatever, wherever we were.
And then the other, one of my roommates in the fraternity house, his brother was a sound engineer. He won a couple of Grammys for Toto, remember Africa? And also worked with Duran Duran.
Yes.
So Duran Duran, I didn't know of Duran Duran, but he was a huge Duran Duran fan, and particularly the song Planet Earth, which we listened to every single Friday night before he went out, along with the B-52's Party Mix. Now, I was a B-52's fan, but I'd never heard the Party Mix, which were 6 of their songs mixed and to be one song, which was a big deal then, which I still love the Party Mix. And then there was another friend of mine, Jack, who was way ahead of trends. He wore leather pants. He was the first one to get a CD player. He introduced me to the Eurythmics, particularly the song The Walk.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember hearing that for the first time in his room and wondering who that was. And then the bottom 3, the Cars, and particularly, they were out of Boston, but we never really listened to the Cars.
Well, Rick Ocasek, the lead singer for the Cars, I used to see him in the Village all the time here. He used to go to a B. Dalton bookstore. But I didn't really listen to them till second semester freshman year and sophomore year. And then who's this other one here?
So the Cars at Candio and Moving Stereo, which my fraternity brother, my big brother in the fraternity, was really big into that, as he was with Stevie Nicks and Donnie Iris. So Donnie Iris was another one of these guys from Youngstown, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, rock musician. He was known. He used to be in the group Wild Cherry that did Play That Funky Music, White Boy.
Oh, yeah.
But he also had a couple of hits. One was Aaliyah. And then Love Is Like a Rock. But anyway, so he was big as well. And then Stevie Nicks, we knew Fleetwood Mac, but he was this guy Bob.
Not her. This is the beginning of like some of her solo
Right,
work.
Stevie Nicks,
yeah.
and particularly The Edge of 17, the song The Edge of 17.
Oh,
I
yeah.
looked it up.
Yeah.
And do you know where the title came from? So apparently Stevie Nicks was out talking. She was talking with Tom Petty and his first wife, Jane. And she asked him how they met. And she said they met at the age of 17. But she had a very thick accent. And Stevie Nicks thought she said the edge of 17. So she's like, oh, my God, that'd be a
actually a
great
funny-
name.
yeah.
That'd be a great name for a song. And so as she was going to start to write it, it also happened to, as Stevie Nicks was going to write the song, her uncle Jonathan and the murder of John Lennon happened all within the same week in December 1980.
So now
she
the lyric
dedicated
made
the
more
song to
sense,
them, and then there was lots of symbolism in there and so forth of the doves about death and leaving the body and spirit and so forth. But I remember that over and over again, The Edge of 17 with
Oh yeah.
Stevie Nicks. February 82 it was released. So that was the music that made an impression on me. But you and I could have picked 100 albums, the Go-Go's.
I kept it to 19. I kept it to the year that the album
Just
would have
the
been
first
out,
year.
and those first few
So
months.
what
we
were
in school.
yours?
So
Music.
there's a ton of stuff, but I was in a co-ed dorm, but my floor was the basement floor, so it was like half the dorm was exposed and half wasn't. So we were the basement guys. So it was only guys, and I happened to have a floor that was really heavy metal, hard rock. There's only one guy on the floor who started introducing me to a lot of the new wave or new age stuff that he would hear on the station from Long Island, which was
that 92.7?
W
PLR?
It might have been I forget now, but it was like
91.7 or 91.
Larry the Duck
Yeah,
and all these
I remember
guys,
that,
and
yeah.
you know, but that came later. So we used to do the thing. I heard you say this before. You heard it in someone's room. So you'd hang out in a room, right? So I remember hanging out down the hall. And one of our maybe it was Mike's room, Mike Zaitz, and he had just gotten Ghost in the Machine, the Police album. Yeah, I had not. I remember Roxanne because I believe that Roxanne was before Ghost in the Machine. I remember one or two Police songs vaguely, maybe Zenyatta Mendata as well, but this was the one that cohesively held together for me. And I think with all the albums that we're referencing, it's the point at which you introduce the band to yourself, and then you go backwards and forwards. You know, you start buying them, and then you go back and the discography. So that one was a big one for me. This next one, I'm surprised. You remember when Journey came out with Escape?
I was never a Journey fan.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, I never
This
liked
album
Journey.
took the floor by storm. I heard Journey for the very first time when I was in my old business partner Greg's room. He had this enormous bong, and it had a thing called a Gatling. It was a multi-chamber hit thing, and we were playing a game. You had to have like 2 or 3 hits, and then he plays this album, and I was like, oh my God, Journey's so amazing. Right. So and I love the album cover too.
Smoked pot all through college.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, I was better than most of my classmates. I mean, I only allowed that on weekends and maybe like
We
Thursday
got
night.
drug tested.
You rode. You were an athlete.
for-
Yeah, I wasn't getting tested. I was getting tested academically, not, you know. All right, what's the next? I think I put the next one up. I think. Okay, so you introduced me to ABBA.
Love The Visitors.
But The Visitors was not one of their typical albums, in my opinion. So this was
Dark.
and it was a discovery to me to have a band you've listened to for years. Suddenly they come out with this album. And it took me a while, but I actually do like The Visitors.
Yeah, it is a good album.
And another one I put up there was Human League. You know, and we could have said Go-Go's. Like I was looking at all the bands that came out with music around that time as well, and
Men at Work.
Flock huge, Flock of Seagulls, and these were some of their very first. I remember Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
Yeah, Billy Squire.
I went to see
Devo.
her in concert. She played her hit song twice, maybe even 3 times, because that's all she had. She had the 7 or 8 songs on the LP, and then she, you know.
What was the first concert you went to? Do you remember?
In college, it was The Clash, and the Flock of Seagulls opened for them, and we were right at the stage, and it was Rock the Casbah was their huge.
So mine was In Excess open for the Go-Go's.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like that's the only time that stuff would ever happen was back then. We saw Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Ozzy Osbourne. That was another album I was going to almost put up there,
Ozzy?
but yeah. I
He's got a new show up, by the way. Everybody says it's great on the History Channel.
Yeah, he tags around with somebody.
Son.
It's his
Son, yeah, Jack.
That's right. Okay.
Well, that's a
Hey,
nice
memory
trip-
lane.
Trip down memory lane. So it's Tim Bennett with John Nash here in the focus group. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about gender roles and I guess heterosexual versus
Quickie article.
homosexual
Yeah.
couples. So we'll be right back after this quick break.
Brought to you by the Volkswagen Golf GTI. Named one of Car and Driver's 10 best, 10 years in a row. You're listening to the Focus Group
I said to my girlfriend just the other day, monsters are interesting, I said.
with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
And I'll bet you meet a lot of interesting people, too.
Done. Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is the destination for all the information about our show, including all the platforms we're on: YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and now Reverie TV, which is an app available on the Apple TV, the 4th generation, Chromecast, and Roku. All right, so we're just going to do a quick little chat about an article that I came across, which amused me because because I'm sure you're going to tell me things about myself.
Well, the summary, I think, sums it all up.
Yeah, I'll read the summary of this. So the official name of the scientific article was Making Money, Doing Gender, or Being Essentialist, Partner Characteristics, and Americans' Attitudes Towards Housework. But really, the headline I saw was Sex and Gender More Important Than Income in Determining Views on Division of Chores. And the summary of the researchers was, for heterosexual couples, most Americans still believe in the traditional division of household labor between husbands and wives, while for same-sex couples, they think the more masculine partner and the more feminine partner should generally be responsible for stereotypical male and female chores, respectively.
Yep.
And just to clarify that, male chores are car, lawn, garbage,
Discipline of the child.
discipline of the child, and female roles are laundry, cooking,
Meaning nurturing.
learning, nurturing, decorating, needlepoint, whatever.
And even if the woman's the breadwinner, the expectation is
that
she
she's
would still
still-
come home and then
yeah.
assume the role of cooking, housework.
Could I say why I laughed at this?
Why?
Because I do our grocery shopping and I do our laundry,
So you're the femme.
but it's for OCD reasons.
I don't know, John. According to the study, you may be the feminine one. Did you talk to Bob?
I'll tell you a story
You're
quick.
turning red.
My niece once said to me, when she was at that age, my oldest niece, where she was trying to figure out roles, with Thanksgiving one year, she said, Uncle Johnny, I need to talk to you. So we sit down in the bed upstairs, and she says, who's the mommy and who's the daddy? And I said, well, if you don't tell Uncle Bobby, I'm the daddy and he's the mommy. So
Well, their
she
parents
runs
must
down.
have talked about it, right?
Yeah, they did. And Laura comes up. She goes, now I have to reprogram Emma.
No, so what happened? She came down and what?
And she says in this perfect Emma voice, I now have it all figured out. Uncle Johnny's the daddy and Uncle Bobby's the mommy. And then you hear everybody laugh.
What did Uncle Bobby say?
Oh, he just laughed. Yeah.
So you do the laundry.
But all right, so
You do the laundry.
I take care of the
Do the
laundry.
cooking.
No, we split that chore, but I'm in charge of the groceries.
Grocery shopping.
And one big reason why is I'm very specific about protein. Like my shopping habits revolve
You want to
around.
make sure the family eats correctly. Providing a good home,
Look how
like a nice
you
wife.
Spun that up.
nice wife.
Well, I walked right into that bear trap.
Interestingly, and I mean, do you and Bob do you think you take on a feminine or a masculine role?
Yeah,
Or you never thought about it?
The other day, Bob disassembled the garage doors upstate and rebuilt all new ones.
Masculine.
And you would think that, but in the meantime, I was taking. I was taking care of the car. I was, making sure the tires were okay. I had
Grocery shopping.
then
I had a
on the
load of
way back-
laundry. I had a load of laundry in, and then I
yeah.
did a quick dusting because we had company coming over.
Yeah, but I do know couples that tend to fall into this pattern, a little more like the study,
Yeah.
basically.
Growing up with your mom and dad, was it very traditional?
Oh,
that
yeah,
your mom,
totally.
Even though your mom worked as much as your dad did, she'd have to come home and then she was cooking.
She was the cook. She did the laundry.
At the house.
Dad was in charge of finances. He was terrible at it.
He was in charge of the discipline, but your mother was the nurturer.
Wait till your father gets home. Yeah,
It's the same.
and the car repair stuff. And before engines got so complicated, you used to be able to lift up a lid and
figure it out.
Yeah, and I learned how to change the timing thing, the spark plugs, the the belt that was for the anyway,
timing belt.
Alternator. There was the alternator belt as well.
No, I read this.
Timing belt. That's right.
I read this as well and thought I think we do all fall into roles, and I think some of it happens to be whether you're good at something or not. So if
yeah.
And exactly what you said. I've when I lived with Matt, he was horrible with laundry. Stuff got bleached and wasn't so. I got so aggravated. Now it might have been a ruse to say because he didn't like doing laundry, so all of a sudden I took over that chore. But I think people do what they're best at, and but I'm guessing everybody does. According to this study, 90% of the people go right into traditional
gender roles. All you have to see is Bob putting away freshly folded laundry, and that just gives you all the clue you need to know. Like, all right, so years and years ago, I was flying back from San Diego to New York on one of my every other week business trips to this pharmaceutical company, and I read this great article about how to get time back in your life. And the woman who wrote it said, basically, you need to standardize a lot of things. When you open a drawer, it should be neat. Everything should be stacked because you should be able to pack in like an hour or half an hour or whatever. So I began this process of getting rid of all the stuff I didn't wear, and I began to really standardize things and fold things. So one time I come up with the laundry, and Bob's is all folded, and he just opens the drawer and he just
throws it in.
Literally balls it up and throws it in. I'm like, oh my God. And so when he folds stuff, well, you know what the other thing is? I worked at a clothing store, used to work at Walden Books, so I was taught how to fold a T-shirt. It's like at the Gap, there's the board.
But I'm particular about that as well. I always was very good about hanging things up when I came home, whatever. But that's another thing I'm going to do. I've got to getting ready for the fall, I got to clean my closets when Labor Day comes. Get rid of things I'm not wearing.
That's one of your all-time goals.
Yeah. I get rid of stuff all the time, but I'm to that point again where I need to get rid of things.
Frankly, with our TV presence, that's becoming a problem for me. I can't purge anymore because we need
blue. I'm wearing blue since I got made fun of my soda drink.
There you go.
Hey, it's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Thanks for joining us today. We want to also thank our partner here on the Focus Group, Volkswagen of America. Be sure to check out all the models they have to offer at VW.com. And shortly, John and I will have a special coming up because we're headed out west to drive the all-new all-wheel drive all-track wagon. It's a Golf Sport wagon which will have all-wheel drive. We also hear that there's going to also be another model, which will not be an all-track, but will also have all-wheel drive, a wagon, as well as another SUV. So Volkswagen's coming out with a pretty big power play here with a number of crossovers and SUVs. So stay tuned, and we'll be able to tell you about those later on in the year. Have a great week, everyone.
The Focus Group, an entertaining look at the outside of business. For your convenience, listen anytime, anywhere, anyway, anyhow, and on anything. Got it? Head over to focusgroupradio.com and pick your poison. We're all business, except when we're not.